Intelligent Ramblings with your host, Bill Alton. Co-hosted by Gary Glenn and William Howington with help from John Coleman.
Hey there. We'd like to welcome you to Intelligent Ramblings. I'm Bill Lofton. I'm your host with my co-host William Howington, John Cone, and Gary Glenn. Well, let's get right into it, guys. First day of jury deliberations in Trump's hush money trial. Ends without a verdict today. Think they'll be out a long time or short time?
I think they'll be out for a while.
I heard somebody say that
they've already asked.
Will be done with it about Friday of this week. That ought to be done by then.
Well, they've already sent a couple of inquiries out for some clarification of things, so they're taking this seriously.
I didn't realize it was against the law to pay somebody money to keep quiet. You mean if I paid somebody some money to keep quiet, that'd be against the law?
No, it's against the law to take that money and say, I spent that building a building.
I think it depends on the circumstances.
They slushed it off as something else, and you can't do that. You can't say, okay, I went out and bought this Maserati, and then write it off as your work vehicle. You know, and that's pretty much what he did.
There was a comment a couple weeks ago about that the charges are really just misdemeanors, and we talked about it, in fact, a couple weeks ago, and they're not misdemeanors. They are in the first degree, which means they're felonies. And the reason they're felonies is he falsified records and then used that to facilitate other crimes, basically election fraud. And so that's why he's in the pickle that he's in.
He just accused it of being an election fraud. He wasn't responsible for election fraud.
True, William. At this point, he stands accused, not convicted.
Yeah.
And he's blowing it off as the fact that he was trying to.
On the show, even if he is convicted, he could still be president.
Which is just crazy.
Well, the politics now are getting to be a cartoon. You know, an old man and the evil emperor wannabe. You know, what can you say? I mean, it
is kind of a sad cartoon, you know, that these are the two candidates that we've got. But that's what we've got right now.
I think he ought to worry more about what's going on in Atlanta, because he cut and dried that. I mean, in Georgia, it was pretty cut and dry. All we need is 782 votes or something like that. You know, that's all we need. We need you to get it for us somehow.
Yeah.
That's coercion. I mean, dictionary definition, coercion. And I think that's where he's got to worry about more than what he's worrying about right now.
Yeah.
Although if they convict him of 54 counts, that could add up to, you know, if they give him 3 months on each trial, that's still 20 years. Or my math's wrong. More like 10 years.
I don't know what the 54 counts are for. Somebody want to enlighten me?
Yeah, in Georgia, the counts are for basically election fraud in Georgia, trying to what they do, try to coerce state officials into saying the that Biden didn't win the election in Georgia. And, oh, by the way, find us 11,780 votes or whatever that number was that you can hear him asking for on the phone call. And,
Yeah, I've heard that phone call.
I don't have it right handy, but somewhere I've got the indictment for both the trial that he's in right now and the Georgia trial, and it lists all the charges, and it's pretty simple. And like Bill said, it is cut and dried, especially in Georgia because they, son of gun, there he is on the phone call doing exactly what they said he did.
Well, the Justice Department has got him for a 38-count criminal indictment with the classified
Documents?
Yeah, classified documents. That's 38 counts on that. So,
well, here's the thing: these all are going to go before a jury, and sometimes you just don't know what the outcome is going to be because all they need is a reasonable doubt, and there's a good reason for that. Neither side should count their chickens before they're hatched, to coin a phrase.
Yeah, you need to coin that one.
Well, and remember, and remember that in a jury trial, you are not found innocent or guilty. You are found guilty or not guilty. My wife served on a jury one time, and she said we all thought that the person did it, but the prosecution did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. There was that tinge of doubt, and we can read the reports, and we can see the videos, and we can see the little sketches they do from the courtroom, but we are not there for every minute of the trial, so we don't hear everything that the jury hears. And like you said, John, if we were there, maybe we would come to the same conclusion, but we're not. So I'm willing to let the wheels of justice grind their way forward, and we'll see what happens. We'll deal with it after that.
I mean, OJ got not guilty, and he was as guilty as hell, and we all know it, and he admitted it, after a couple of years. So pretty much anything's possible.
Well, not specifically with OJ. He said he wrote a book or something that said, "If I had done it."
If I had done it. Yeah, right.
Of course they did. Of course they did find him guilty. They did find him guilty in the civil trial, which is not the same thing as a criminal trial.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a fumble by the prosecution in that particular thing. The whole business with the glove and all of that. That was.
Yeah.
I think he had somebody come in and do it, and he was there. I think he brought somebody in, and they did all the work.
We're talking about OJ or Trump?
OJ.
Oh, OJ did it. There ain't no doubt in my mind. I wasn't even on the jury. I don't care nothing about the glove fitting or nothing like that. He was guiltier than a dog in the woods.
Reasonable doubt.
That ain't no reasonable doubt to me.
Well, what do you think about Scotty Scheffler? He has all the charges have been dropped, and he's free as a bird. Do you think this is a little bit of he's the number one golfer on the planet leeway, or is this they actually dropping it because he did what he said he did? I mean, I saw the video, and it's very inconclusive.
Well,
it sounds like that cop made this stuff up.
I think after all of that other video came out, the other testimony came out. At
least didn't have a leg to stand on.
Charges. I mean,
well, you mean you saw it where he took a left going into the gate, and this guy came running over to his car and pounded on it. And he wasn't dressed as a cop, and he said, "Get out of the car." He didn't say, "I'm a police officer, get out of the car. I'm officer, blah, blah, blah. Here's my badge, get out of the car." He just came over to Scheffler's car and slammed his damn flashlight on it and said, "Get out." And he was like,
Yeah,
I mean, this guy's a
Scheffler himself
world-famous golfer.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got out
Probably
either.
approached by wackos all the time. No,
I
Yeah.
probably would have shot
you
him.
didn't know who that guy was.
No.
Well, and he said if I had known he was a police officer, I would have complied, but he didn't know that. And the guy, as you said, made no effort to identify himself as a police officer. You know, I back the blue because, you know, as you all know, most of the males in my family at one time or another were involved in law enforcement. I was in radio at the time. I told them they could go get shot at, and I'd tell people about it. I'd rather not get shot at myself. I've been shot at a time or two, and I didn't care for it. But, you know, you can't, just because you put on a badge and a gun doesn't necessarily make you infallible or one of the good guys all the time. Come on. And this guy didn't even have a uniform on, right?
Nope, no uniform,
Some
no
random
camera.
wacko comes up to
It's
the
some kind of
world-famous
raincoat
guy.
on. A
He didn't even-
yellow
he didn't-
raincoat.
He didn't even have his webcam there on his chest recording, and he got in trouble for that before they even dropped
Body
the
cam.
charges.
Oh,
And, you know, so, and me watching the video, it just looks like some guy runs up to his car and slams his thing on it. And he talked about he drug him and it hurt him, it tore his uniform. Well, A, he didn't have his uniform on. B, it did not drag him at all. So, not guilty.
Yeah, he's got a good case for a civil
Yeah,
suit. I
I mean-
doubt very seriously if he'll sue, but
Can you imagine the phone calls and the pressure that the sheriff was getting to fix this and fix this right now? I mean, that wouldn't have.
hopefully Trump
Been a
wasn't one
fun
of
day
those
at work.
calls.
So, well, you know, some people get a pass because they're famous, and some people get picked on because they're famous. I mean, I think it ought to be really right down the road, right down the line. If you, one way or the other, if you're guilty, you're not. If you're, do you err on the side of mercy? Do you err on the side of justice? Or I don't know. It's a judgment call a lot of times.
Yeah, that's a big mess. He shouldn't have. I don't know why he tried to stop him. He can do it better than that. All you got to do is,
Oh.
like you say, flash your badge.
Yeah. Should have gone towards the car with his badge
Well-
out in front of him, you know.
All's well that ends well, supposedly.
Yeah.
Judge Alito, Supreme Court Judge Alito, rejects calls to quit the Supreme Court cases and says his wife is responsible for the controversial flags that were flying at his house.
Hey,
Well, his wife
the
That
did it.
whole
one question
business
that
is
jumps right
weird.
out at you. Yeah, but you know, let me say the one thing that jumps right out at you. Well, two things. One, nothing illegal was done. It's not a question of the law. It's a question of public relations and perception. But the second thing is, why didn't somebody ask the wife? Did you say that? Did you ask your husband not to take them down? Did you insist on keeping it up?
Oh, yeah.
Those flags. Why don't somebody ask the wife? If I was
sounds
a
like-
news person, I'd be going after her like a duck on a June bug. Come on.
Well, he sounds like a controlling prick, you know. You can look
Yeah.
by his picture and tell he's a prick, but he's a controlling prick. And the fact that he didn't, like you said, you know, he didn't take responsibility for number one because his wife did it, and he's kind of hiding behind her skirt. But it was brought to his attention, and
is
he left
the
it up
truth,
there.
or is he throwing her under the bus?
Yeah. Anyway, you
I
look
think he's
at it, if
kind
you
of
don't,
throwing her under the bus.
if you don't take
I were the
responsibility,
wife and somebody was, yeah.
I don't see what the big deal is anyway.
the big deal is that you have to be impartial. At least you have to look impartial to be a Supreme Court judge. Well, he don't look very damn impartial. It doesn't look that way to me because he's got the flag flying upside down at his house for 5 days after the January 6th episode. That's him not impartial. And he, knowing that he has to remain impartial, if his wife was responsible, why didn't he go to his wife and say, you got to take that down. I'm a Supreme Court judge. I have to look impartial, and I'm not looking impartial when you flying a flag upside down. As many of the participants in the January 6th soiree at the Capitol, and that's what everybody was taking it for. That the judge, Alito, was supporting those terrorists that ransacked the Capitol.
I wouldn't call them terrorists. I'd say concerned citizens.
They were terrorizing
Again,
the Capitol.
if I am
How
the
could it
wife
not be
and
terrorist?
I'm being accused of this.
I think I'd call them convicted because hundreds of them have been, and their
I'd say
asses
some
are
of
in
the
jail.
senators are pretty terrified.
Well, yeah, they're walking around prison now, hundreds of them, and I'll stick to my guns. I call them terrorists because they terrorized the Capitol and all the people that were in it, and they terrorized the police officers that was trying to protect it, and had a hangman's noose hanging up on a platform outside. That's kind of terrorizing to me.
How much did we terrorize the British
I'll
in 1776?
Tell you what,
The British.
I'll bet you there was a lot of.
That was a different country. And we did.
That's a good point.
We were the terrorists in 1776. Absolutely. We were the terrorists. Jeb Stuart was a terrorist during the Civil War when he'd take his cavalry and come in where the idiots were all lined up in a line, and he'd come up and circle them and kill them all and run over them with their horses. Jeb Stuart did that in the Civil War, and he was famous for his cavalry. They were the terrorists of the Civil War. We were the terrorists of the Revolutionary War to the British, which were the rulers at that point. And the terrorists now are the people that tried to overrun the thing. They're in jail.
Speaking of what, Gary?
Speaking of
lost
war,
your
how would you like to
audio.
be a member of the Alito household right now?
I would not. Quite frankly, I wouldn't like to be a member of
I
that.
bet you there's some
household
domestic.
ever.
There's some domestic strife.
I lost your audio.
Well,
A member of
I
what?
bet you right now things of the Alito household. I'll bet you there's a lot of strife going on there. With the wife is she taking the fall for this? I mean, if I were her and I was being accused of something I didn't do, I think the husband would be in the doghouse for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely.
Now he can forget his Viagra this week.
Well said.
No doubt.
Well
said.
He will have no need of that.
Not that any of us ever need anything like that.
Not that we would. Francis Macron. Is it Macron? The president of France has joined the head of NATO in pushing for a policy shift that could change the complexion of a war in Ukraine, allowing Kyiv to strike military bases inside Russia with sophisticated long-range weapons provided by Western nations. Of course, they haven't. The Western nations have been like, oh no, we can't strike in Russia because Putin said if we did, then he'd start nuking people. I don't see how you can have a war that's reasonable without being able to strike the other country that you're next to that invaded you. Because if Putin pulls out the nukes, he knows it's going to be a serious situation for Russia. It'll be the end of Russia. It'll be the end of a lot of stuff, but it'll be the end of Russia for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think if that happens, then so number one, I agree that Ukraine ought to be able to use whatever weapons they have to strike anywhere they need to. And Andrea's right. We're telling Ukraine right now, you can run right up to the border, but you can't fire anything into Russia. And they've been asking for a long time to be able to do that. I think they should. And I think Russia will respond probably in a really bad way, and NATO is going to get involved immediately. I think you could just about count on it ratcheting up to that level as soon as Ukraine fires the first round into Russia.
It's, I would say they're pretty well rock and roll right now in Poland and the other countries that are close by. This came out today that Poland is ratcheting up their border with Belarus and Russia. They're adding fortifications. So, you know, those airports that are just outside of Ukraine that are in the countries that we are friends with, that are Western allies, those planes are already there waiting. So, I mean, it's not like it could be 2 or 3 days or a week while we load up our army and bring it over there. It's already there.
Right.
You bet your ass we got a bunch of G.I. Joes in Poland right now, and every other border country that we can put them in. And they're not announcing it, but I promise you, they're there.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to just run roughshod over us. I mean, it's going to be and yeah, if he uses nukes, then it's a whole new ball of wax.
Does anybody have family or friends in the military who are involved around Ukraine? I'm just wondering because I used to work with a guy who's about half his family was in the military. This was during the first Gulf War, and he said, I know something's going to happen because I can't reach my brother. He's somewhere in country, and I'm not able to get anything, no word from him, no word to him. He said something's going to happen soon. And I'm wondering if anybody out there knows anybody like that. I think that would be a really good signal that.
But I've got a brother-in-law that's retired Army, and he did 2 tours in Afghanistan and 2 tours in Iraq, and he would know, and I think he would let me know if we need to buckle down and get ready for something. He's still in the know, but I feel a lot better about the whole world situation because I didn't realize it, but the India does not like China at all. They have a border dispute going, which to me is really nice, and the fact that we got a gazillion Indians on our side, and I was really worried about it until that situation where it kind of balances the power, having the Indians there. But that's all I got to say on that. Let's see. Last but not least, there's a new Louisiana law which will criminalize approaching a police officer. In other words, walking up towards him. New Louisiana law will make it a crime to knowingly approach within 25 feet, 7.6 meters, of a police officer while they are engaged in law enforcement duties and after the officer has ordered the person to stay back. My whole whatever about that is the fact that if I'm going to California, I'm going north and around Louisiana. I've heard too many horrible stories about their law enforcement there, and I won't be going through Louisiana anytime soon. And if I do, I'll stay on the interstate and make sure I got enough gas before I hit Louisiana to get all the way through on I-10 to the other side.
I kind of like Louisiana.
Yeah, well, it's simple thing about it is that they got scary law enforcement.
Yeah, they do. It's like being in a different country almost.
Yeah.
It is just different. Even in the bigger cities like New Orleans, or what's the other Louisiana city I'm trying to think of?
Shreveport?
Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge.
Thank you, William.
Baton Rouge.
It's just a whole different world. Those Cajuns have been in that swamp for way too long.
All those Cajuns.
I wouldn't want to go to New Orleans, though, sure enough.
Andrea said, but Israel can use our weapons for anything they want. Not really. They weren't supposed to, but they have, and they will. No doubt
give
about
it
that.
to them. Why can't they use them?
Well, they're catching some flack for that.
Yeah, they are.
What, giving it to them or using it?
No, using it, especially this latest thing, the Rafa thing, is just, well, pardon the pun, literally blown up in their face. And now they're having to do all kinds of investigations for it. You know, it's like, though, when you start establishing rules for war, where do you draw the line? Oh, yes, you can wage war, but you can't shoot them in their country. Oh, we're giving you these weapons, but you can't use them for this. To me, that's just kind of crap to expect that to even hold up.
It's like our M16s in Vietnam. They made us rebore them because the bullets tumbled, not spin. Did too much damage. It killed them when you shot somebody. They didn't want them to kill them. They just wanted to wound them.
Does anybody know if they used us first rounds in that last attack on Rafah that killed so many civilians, burned them alive? I was just wondering, because that's the kind of ordinance that does that kind of thing, and it's also ordinance that the United States military won't use because of that.
I didn't hear anything on that.
I don't know either. I'm just wondering out loud.
Don't know.
Well, guys, let's go on to another aspect of Intelligent Ramblings just about right now.
Well, I guess it's my turn now. Every year, my wife Jill and I try to tune into the Memorial Day concert hosted by the Hollywood folks, Joe Mantegna and Gary Sinise. You may remember Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan from the Forrest Gump movies, and Joe Mantegna has been in a whole bunch of different stuff. Anyway, they have a very strong connection to the Memorial Day cause and the veterans. Well, and during this show, they do patriotic music, of course, and they have actors, sometimes very famous ones, narrate the stories of those who have served, and they do it in the first person. In other words, as if they were the actual people telling the story. They did one this year of a World War II vet who was still alive and with them in the audience. He had to be close to 100 years old. But his stance was sure and his grip was firm when he shook the hand of Bryan Cranston, who had told his story. Now, if this all doesn't bring a lump to your throat or a tear to your eye, there's something probably desperately wrong with you. Now, I have been in our schools as an adjunct professor, a teacher, a coach, and substitute teacher. In other words, kind of all levels from maybe pre-kindergarten to university level. And I've seen this thing up close, and that is, we appear to be raising a whole generation of folks to whom all of this stuff, Memorial Day and the sacrifices of these people, all of this stuff is just ancient history and has nothing to do with them. They don't realize that without the sacrifices of those whom we honored this past Monday and the service of so many more, they would not have the freedoms and the privileges they have to pursue the latest electronic doodad or peruse the latest app on the latest iteration of the iPhone they just had to have. It's tough to get them to even stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the national anthem, let alone recite it or sing along. That makes me sad and just a little bit angry. Now, not all of the young'uns are like this, of course, but too many of them are. Sometimes I call them on it. Other times I just shake my head and I want to shake them and say, wake up. Don't you know what the people did and sacrificed so that you can sit on your ass and look bored or indifferent? Don't you know what the rest of the world would give to be fed, clothed, and educated the way you are? Our flag and those things like the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, those things stand for the highest ideals of liberty, truth, and justice, to which we as a people and a nation should aspire. They are not symbols of any particular political agenda or some doctrine of hate and discrimination, no matter who has co-opted them for their own twisted worldview. Now, do we fall short of these things at times, this attitude of reverence? Do we fall short of the goals? Of course we do. But not all of the time. Not all of the time. We have a ways to go, not just in the South, by the way, and I get tired of that. We have a ways to go everywhere in this country. But the progress we have made has been enormous. I saw a post recently on Facebook, which vanished before I had a chance to share it, and post some of these musings I've just iterated along with it. And that post said something along the lines of, I am proud to be an American and a Christian. Most people won't share because they are afraid. I'm not so sure that we are scared so much as we are indifferent. You know, as long as I'm okay, I really don't care about you. From the Cokesbury hymnal from my youth, number 123, I believe. We praise thee, O God, for the Son of thy love, for Jesus who died and is now gone above. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again. We need a revival to sweep our nation, folks. A revival of kindness and concern. A revival of integrity and honesty. We need a revival of values. That's my time out. Thanks for yours. I'm Gary Glenn.
This webcast is brought to you by William Lofton Photography. They can be found at williamlofton.com. Offering event residential portraiture at williamlofton.com. Well, welcome to 3 Minutes to Talk with Bill Lofton, and I am joined tonight with Gina Gailey, a amazing singing artist. Got a velvety voice like you've never heard, but it's got a little bit of punch to it too. You know, it's a great. I saw her concert, not a real long time ago, but long enough that I know I need to go hear her sing again. And she has been nice enough to join us tonight on our 3 Minutes to Talk. So Gina, tell me, how'd you get involved with all this singing?
Oh, first of all, Mr. Bill, thank you for having me on tonight. I appreciate it, and I miss listening to those guys talk. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay. When did I get into all this? As long as I can remember walking and talking, I was writing songs in my head and singing and making up songs. So I guess I would say I was born doing it. I was always making a stage if there wasn't one, and making up songs where there wasn't one. And it's been something that's always been a part of me.
Well, let me tell you, everybody thinks that they're a good singer. I know I'm not, because my wife has told me many times to be quiet, that I'm out of tune, and I don't know. I can't remember words. Is my biggest flaw, or I'd be a rock and roll star, I'm sure. But how tough is it on the road? I mean, is it worth it? Is it worth the what you have to go through? Because what do you have to go through?
I think it's either you love it or you don't love it. You talk to a lot of musicians, you talk to a lot of, singer songwriters. Some of them they can't do it. I've always traveled back in my sportscasting days, and it's just something that I've done, and I'm okay with it. And I love traveling. Yeah, you miss home. Yeah, sometimes when you get home, everybody wants you, but sitting on the couch in your sweatpants is nice too. But I love it. It's my passion. It's my desire. And I can't see myself not doing it. And I'm fortunate enough that those that I love, that are around me, they come when they can, and I get to see a lot of them. But I think, the road is not for everybody. And sometimes it does break the artist or the musician. And I've seen it happen, quite a few times. You got to be strong mentally. You've got to have a good support system back home, and all that comes into play, and your faith's got to be strong too. So I think I have all of those factors aligned, and I'm just fortunate enough that it is something, that I can do.
Well, I actually knew one of the original members of Molly Hatchet. And
cool.
They, and I looked on the album covers and everywhere for him, and I never saw him. And I asked him, I said, I don't see it. And he said, he says, I was an original member, but when they started traveling, he said, I wanted to be married and have a family, and I didn't want to travel. And so I left the band.
Right.
I mean, he was still a musician, but it was just not for him, is what he said. And that was before they got famous. But what do we see in the future for Gina Gailey?
We've got a brand new CD that we are ready to release. It's all but one song on the CD I wrote, and I got to write with #1 songwriters in Nashville that have all the hits on the radio, and held my own. And we're very proud of this project. So in the next few months, you'll be seeing some little hints of what we're going to be releasing, and we're super excited about it. So that's what we're working on now. Not rebranding, but we are kind of redoing the logo, and ready to release some new merchandise at the end of the summer, which we're super, super excited about as well, to go along with the album release.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to count on you getting all that information to me so I can post it on there.
Absolutely.
Have one of our groups is Intelligent Ramblings Friends on Facebook, and feel free to join that and post all you want to post, because you're now an Intelligent Rambling friend.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, as always. You guys are always there. And thank you for having me on tonight, and tell everybody I said hello.
I certainly will. And Thank you again, Gina, and we'll be listening to you soon.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. So, hey, we've been hearing a lot recently about annual deficits and the national debt. And it's a topic that comes up a lot during presidential campaigns. And so I wanted to talk about annual deficits and the national debt this evening a little bit, just to give you some context and definition about deficits and the debt. So the annual deficit happens when the government spends more in a year than they take in revenue. Revenue primarily comes in through tax receipts. And the national debt builds up over time, year after year, as the accrued deficits, the shortfalls that happen every year, are covered by debt. And that debt is in the form of treasury securities like T-bills, T-notes, T-bonds, savings bonds. Deficits happen almost every year. And they've happened pretty much every year, with a few exceptions, over the last 30 to 40 years. One exception happened during the last 3 years of the second Clinton administration. We ran a surplus over those years, which was gone after the first year of the George W. Bush administration. We started running deficits again shortly after that. So what are the events that create annual deficits? Usually it's some big unforeseen impact to the economy, or they're tax related. And by tax related, I mean tax cuts over the last 30 to 40 years have created the large part of the annual deficits that we see every year and the national debt that builds up over time. So let's talk about I can think of 6 major events that were related to deficits, annual deficits, over the last 40 years. The Reagan tax cuts in 1986, the Bush tax cuts in 2001, the Great Recession in 2008, the Trump tax cuts in 2017, the pandemic, which started in 2020, and currently we're running a deficit like any other year. But those are the 6 big events that have added significantly to deficit spending over the last 30 to 40 years. The Reagan tax cuts, in fact, created such a big deficit that they had to rescind many of the original tax cuts that he got into legislation in over the following years, 1987 and 1988. And as I mentioned before, the Bush tax cuts ended up creating deficits where we had run surpluses over the previous 3 years. The Great Recession and the pandemic, though, created relatively huge deficits. And that's the bad news. The good news is our economy is strong enough that we were able to work down the deficit in subsequent years. So, say in 2008, the year of the Great Recession, the deficit that year was very bad. It was large, $1.413 trillion. as a percent of GDP, it was up to 9.4%. And just a few years later, we had worked that down to where we were running deficits half of that size, if not smaller. The other big impact was the pandemic. We ran deficits that amounted to 14.2% of GDP. In 2020, the deficit totaled $3.132 trillion. It's like 3 times larger than it had been in the past. And also there, the economy was strong enough coming out of the pandemic that we've been able to reduce the deficit spending each year since the pandemic in 2020. The annual deficits tend to return over time to a mean around GDP. And as a percent of GDP, they don't change much. They're rarely in double digits as a percent of GDP, most of the time in single digits, like 3 to 5% of GDP. The good news about deficits is they're actually stimulative to the economy. And it's not like politicians are willy-nilly throwing this money around. For the most part, it's planned for. It's spent thoughtfully on programs that benefit Americans and provide a foundation for economic growth. The national debt, which we talked about before, builds up over time as we run deficits, is publicly held. So for the most part, we own it. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, we own our own debt, which is a good thing. And it also doesn't change much as a percent of GDP. Remember, GDP is 1 year of national income. So, for example, right now, the national debt is about 85% of GDP. So 1 year, if we had to spend our GDP, our income from 1 year, it would cover the entire national debt with some left over. Those are the main points that I wanted to bring out about annual deficits and the national debt. I'm going to post all my notes on Facebook at Intelligent Rambling Friends. And if you have comments or questions, I'm happy to talk to you there or right here for that matter. So thank you very much. See you next week.
Tonight we're going to talk about professional baseball. The reason I'm talking about this is because it's already happening in the minor leagues and will probably be happening in the major leagues pretty soon. That's the ABS system, or the automated ball strike system. It's a challenge system. After the umpire calls it a ball or a strike, each team is allowed 3 challenges. And the only ones that can call for the challenge are the catcher, the pitcher, and the batter. The dugout can't call for it, just those 3. So a situation that'll work, let's say that you got 3 balls and 2 strikes on the batter, and there's a close pitch, and the umpire calls it a ball. Well, the catcher signals by tapping his head that he wants to have this checked out. And they look at it, and even though it's close, it was in fact a ball. If it was a ball, the catcher loses his challenge, loses 1 challenge, and the runner gets to take first base. If it was a strike, however, this batter has struck out, and you retain that challenge, which means you still have 3 challenges. The same thing true with the batter. If it's a close pitch and the umpire calls it a strike, you can challenge it and say that it was a ball, and they have it they show it up on the Jumbotron, the big screen, and you can actually see it come in. I went to a minor league game Friday. The AAA Gwinnett Stripers, which is the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, were playing the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, which is the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. And it worked pretty well. It didn't take that long either, and it was kind of exciting to see whether there was going to be a ball or a strike. And you looked at it up there on the big screen, and the pitch would come in, and it would either touch, like this square that I'm in right now. You either touch the square, or you're in it, or you're out of the square. And I'm sure you've seen on TV where they have that box, and you can call it a ball or a strike. It's pretty nifty. I think Major League Baseball will probably have it, and you won't have calls like Angel Hernandez made the other day, where the ball was clearly outside, and he called it a strike. Of course, they called Angel into the front office and basically told him he was through, so he retired right then and there after 30, I think it was 33 years in the Major League umpiring business. But everybody's glad to get rid of Angel. This should help. This should help umpires, because you say, hey, you should have challenged me, and you could have got the call overturned. Another thing I want to talk about, this happened today. Major League Baseball has allowed the statistics from the Negro Leagues to count in the major leagues from 1920 to 1948. Now, this has caused some uproar, obviously, and what happens is people like Ty Cobb, who had the record for the highest career batting average, 367, suddenly woke up today. Well, he didn't wake up. He's been dead 100 years. But woke up today and was taken over by Josh Gibson of the Negro League with a 372 average. So Cobb played back around 1920, or finished playing around 1920. That's 100 years ago. And a lot of people consider him one of the greatest players of all time. He's a Georgia Peach, was born and raised in Franklin County, Georgia. My opinion on this is crazy. These were great athletes, and they were great ball players, and would have been probably great players in the major leagues. But the fact is, they didn't play in the major leagues. They played in another league. And it's apples to oranges, and you shouldn't put them together. It's not right. It's not fair. This is my opinion, and not the opinion of Intelligent Ramblings. But anyway, on a lighter note, colleges are starting Friday with the regionals. 4 teams per region, 16 regionals, 64 teams in the playoffs. And the closest one to us here is in Athens at the University of Georgia at Foley Field. And you can see Georgia playing Army Friday at 1 o'clock. Then you can see arch rival Georgia Tech playing UNC Wilmington at 7 p.m. So you can go watch that in Athens. And just like I predicted last week, or tried to predict and hoped it would happen, Ben King, a Georgia Tech reliever out of Calhoun, Georgia, is going to be able to play a little bit more, at least 2 more games, because it's double elimination in the regional there. And I'm wishing him well, except for when they play Georgia. Go Dogs. We'll see you next week with some sports.
Well, that worked. First time ever I've actually done it right. But I will be watching watch my phone for the scores of the Georgia games. William, I actually keep up with the Georgia baseball team. Not a big a baseball fan as you guys are, but you and Gary especially.
Braves are losing right now 3-1.
But that was a great show. John, you still there?
I am here.
You got some bright light in your face, man. Big time.
I know. It's my moniker. Hold on. Let's see if I can.
I'm glad to see Gina. Jeannie's really a good singer. I've seen her about 4 or 5 times, and
There you go.
it's fun watching her.
Well, the first time I saw her, I didn't know what really to expect, and I was amazed at her voice. It was amazing. I mean, just her time's coming. She's gonna make it big in Nashville. It's gonna happen because she is that big a talent.
That's awesome.
Well,
And a nice person.
Just as she's just as sweet and smart and talented as she is pretty, and that's a unique combination of anything. Because Jenny used to come and do those variety shows that we would put on for charity, and I performed with her and sung on the stage with her. And you ought to see her and Dickie Horde do Jackson as June Carter and Johnny Cash. That is.
I would like to see that.
I was glad to see Gina. Oh, it's really you could close your eyes and swear it was them. It's really good.
Man.
Really good stuff.
I would like to hear that.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Well, guys, another week has passed, and it got a little bit hotter. So we're in the hot season starting soon with June coming right around the corner. And so us folks down here in North Georgia, it's getting warm.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'll have an update on my garden next week. I never know.
That sounds good. Hey, Bill, really quick technical thing. Can we get Andrea put in a couple of comments while William was talking? Can you push her comments through really quick?
Okay. We haven't borrowed from China in the past and we paid them back and we still owe them. Yes.
Yes, is the short answer. And they recently sold a lot of Treasury securities for the purposes of trying to weaken our currency. And we have to pay those bills, notes, bonds back, just like we have to pay it back to anybody who buys one.
How do we feel about
the rest
ABS?
of the story is they don't have any percentage over us.
I like it. I think it's helpful and it'll help the umpires. I mean, all you do is you only get 3 per team. You're talking about there's 200 and something pitches in a game on average, and you only get 3 per team to challenge. And it's really kind of fun. You get to watch it on the screen, the ball come in there and nick the corner of the strike zone.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Like making it, when you got these real close games and you see a strike and it's obviously a strike and the guy calls it a ball, you're like, you want to kill the umpire. Well, now you don't have to kill him. You just have to make him look at it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the commissioner of baseball is not for it. I don't know why he's not, but he's not. Rob Manfred.
Well, you all remember, we're all old enough to remember what the furor of instant replay. Oh, no, it's going to take the human element out of the game. Blah, blah, blah. And all it did was make the game to where the right calls are done most of the time. And remember, if it's too close to make a decision, it stays with the human call, right?
Right.
I don't see any problem.
Thank you, Andrea.
Let it go.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea.
Let's see.
Any more comments?
One more. Yep, every other sport teams seems to have it. What took them so long? I agree. This is a good idea.
Well, they've got instant replay on things like outs, but they don't have it on balls and strikes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, guys, another week.
Well, it's just another tool.
Another week, and I hope you guys have a great week. It was great seeing you guys this past weekend. I really enjoyed myself. It was
That was good.
I told Charlotte when you left, I said that was a good get together. And folks, we will see you guys.
Thanks for hosting us.
It's always a pleasure to have you guys.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night, everybody.
Everybody.
And by the way, before I say goodnight, I want to thank the people that watch us after we go off live and then tune into us later. We appreciate you being here, but we appreciate the people that listen to us later on down the road. Have a great week, everybody.
Mm.